365 Sports. Stephen Johnson covers TCU for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Stephen, thanks for your time on the show as always. And saw the note about Todd Graham, Dana Holgorsen joining Sonny Dykes and his staff. Your thoughts about just building up guys with incredible knowledge and experience?
Well, I think Sonny's perspective has always been you can never have enough experience and never have enough smart people around on your staff. Graham's been a pretty constant presence at practice for the last 2 years now. I feel like I see him almost every day. He was there today actually as well too. So former head coach, won a lot of ball games. From my understanding, he'll be working with the offense, kind of explaining things, how he as a defensive coordinator would attack TCU's offense. And Holgorsen will be doing the same thing. He was out there for his spring practice all the way back, I want to say in March, if I remember correctly. So no surprise that he's joining the staff either. And Sonny always talks about when he, after things didn't go his way at Cal, he got his chance to be an analyst here at TCU, and that kind of allowed him to reset his career. So I think he's also using this as an opportunity to give those guys the opportunity as well.
Stephen, so the plan is to have a defensive coach work with the offensive coordinator, an offensive coach work with the defensive coordinator. I mean, I don't know how unique this is because it all works differently, but it does seem like a pretty clever little plan.
I think so. I mean, and when you really think about it, it seemed like when you think about Nick Saban and kind of at the height of their run, it always seemed like they were hiring some type of former head coach to be one of their 20 or 30 offensive analysts. So I think, like I said, man, anytime you can bring in smart guys that have won at a high level, you know, Holgorsen's one of the best offensive minds in the game. Graham at his peak has some really good defenses. I think, you know, it's a win-win either way. Those guys get the opportunity to coach, stay close to the game they love, and Sonny keeps to add two more bright minds to his staff so he can use them as a resource.
Stephen, if you were to break down TCU's offseason in a nutshell, what do you think the main headline or theme for this offseason would be?
Excitement about the defense. The defense dominated in the spring, even though there were a lot of injuries on offense. Andy Avalos has a track record of turning around defenses, getting after the quarterback at Boise State and Oregon. And you know TCU, that was one of the main issues last year with the 3-5 defense. So to see what they did in the spring was a breath of fresh air. They have a lot of talent, a lot of depth on that side of the ball. On the flip side, I think with the offense has a lot of question marks. So the first one will be about Josh Hoover. The second one will be about the offensive line. So it remains to be seen. We're only 2 days into camp, but I'll be very curious to see how the offense progresses as they start going live and getting deeper into camp.
When we had Sonny Dykes on with us in Vegas at Big 12 Media Days, he gushed over Josh Hoover, but that's not the perfect project yet, right? Or not project. It's still a big work in progress, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he has the arm talent. He has the intangibles, and the intangibles, I'm sure, is what he raved about. They love him in that building, and they want to see him do well, not just because, obviously, it's their job to win games, but he wants it bad enough, and people want to see him succeed. But I think the thing, and Sonny touched on it the other day, is Josh's next step will be understanding and learning to be okay with the completion, be okay with the check down, and not always rely on that arm strength to try to fit those balls into those tight windows. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you necessarily have to. So that'll be his next step, and I think he'll also be able to show more of his mobility as well, too, just because they have more depth, so they'll be able to use him more in that area of the game as well.
They went and got Ken Seals as a depth piece as much as anything else, but I'm just curious, just throughout the offseason, if you've heard much on the freshman and Haas Haney. Not that he's expected to play anytime soon, but I just remember watching him, I think it was a year ago in high school, and as a tremendous player. Just is there any early talk about his addition?
I think he had a positive spring. He went through a lot of adversity getting those second team reps just because he was doing so much of it with walk-on receivers and guys who, won't end up playing in the fall. So I think that was kind of his first bit of adversity, and I think he handled it well. His talent is really supreme, and I think they just can't wait to see what he can become down the line. Obviously, he has a winning background at Alito with all those state championships, track speed, also has really good arm strength. His talent is evident. He just needs to get seasoned. I think that will come over time. But I do think it was great for him to have that experience of getting those reps as a second-team quarterback in the spring.
What is right now, you say, the comfort level with Kendall Briles as he moves into another season with Coach Dykes and TCU?
Based on what Sonny said the other day, I would say a 7 or 8. He says the offense is a lot further ahead schematically than they were at any time last year. So if we're just taking it by his word, they seem more confident in the system, especially with the skill guys. But for me, the question still remains, you got all these new pieces on the offensive line. You got to see if guys can make it through camp healthy. And then, of course, you're going to have a brand-new starting running back with Cam Cook, who I like, but I think he only got 16 carries last year. So he's a bit of an unknown. You have talented receiver with Savion Williams, but this is a guy that has shown flashes but hasn't done it consistently. So now if you're TCU, you put up a lot of yards last year. You put up a lot of points on bad teams. Now I think for them it's about being consistent, starts with the red zone, and starts with that offensive line. Being able to assert himself a lot more on the ground game.
Sonny Dykes is confident, though. We talked to him at Big 12 Media Days a couple weeks ago, and he seems to have, figured out everything they did wrong last year and addressed it. Now, again, you got to play the games out to see how it goes in the field, but there was certainly a different vibe, than when we talked to him before spring a few months ago. Like, he really does feel like there's something special with this team. Do you get that from him?
I think so. So the thing is, it seemed like after the national championship, if you pay attention to their transfer class, they brought in a lot of guys from some of those big-name schools that I don't want to say none of them panned out, but I think this year you kind of saw them switch their philosophy where they took a lot more proven players, a lot of guys that were quality locker room guys that had experience, and now you're seeing some of those guys that maybe weren't the biggest names on, some of the recruiting websites, but there could be potential starters. Talking about a guy like Memphis transfer Cam Smith, who got reps with the first team at safety. They got Caleb Elons-Orr from Cal, and I think that was a big-time addition. Anytime you can add an all-conference linebacker to your room, I think that's a major addition to the roster. So they have a lot of guys they brought in that maybe didn't get a lot of notoriety on social media, but there's a lot more depth. We just have to see. I just have so many questions about the offense. Not that it's lacking because of talent, but just can they all put it together?
Steven, what's your verdict on the new uniforms? The update. They no longer have what I think a lot of people refer to as like the Black Panther collar, that very unique to TCU sort of a collar design. Going a little bit more plain, I guess you could say, but they still got the black alternate and all that. What do you think of the shakeup they had uniform-wise?
Look, I think when you have their color combination, it's going to be pretty hard for your uniforms to look bad. But I think they'll look fine, especially once the players start doing the accessories with the cleats and the sleeves and the gloves. But it just really feels like TCU just lost something when they just had the collar removed. It was such a unique look. And even though the uniforms technically aren't that different, that collar just does so much work, man. It really kind of gave the uniform some pop, the silver chrome, the purple as well, too. Now when you see it, it's just, I don't know. They look like any other typical team. But like I said, it's a good color combination. They'll be fine, but it's just been so disappointing to see all these new jerseys revealed, and they all look like carbon copies of each other, or they're just straight up winning.
Yeah, you almost feel like they're changing jerseys now just to do it instead of
sell new jerseys.
Yeah, the merchandise and all of that. But some of these jerseys, you wonder how much they're actually going to sell if they're not something that people like or that has a little zip to them. I always thought that the collar that they had was obviously it was unique. It was almost like somebody that wore a necklace with shark teeth in it.
It's the Black Panther necklace.
Yeah, it's really, really cool. And I thought it did separate them from most everybody else.
Yeah, absolutely. And in my mind, unless you're a absolute blue blood tradition, Penn State, Alabama, Texas, where you just have these signature looks, I think you should go for the gusto and try to be as unique and have your uniforms pop off as much as you can. That'll help you with recruiting. That'll help you stand out. But a lot of the people have theories that eventually we're going to see, I guess, ads come on these jerseys, which is why you're seeing them so plain and almost nothing on them except on the very end of the shoulders and whatnot. I guess I can see that happening. That's the only explanation I can see to every single team having the same exact jerseys. And the jerseys don't have as much personality as I'm used to college football uniforms having.
I have a theory that Nike just brought in a guy and his name's like Gerhardt or something, and they're like, oh, he's the fashion guy, and he's like, this year we are going understated, and that's what we are going to do. It's going to be stripes, and that's it. And they're like, oh, brilliant, clap, 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 and everybody's like, okay, well, whatever.
Yeah, there's that. Maybe they were busy with the Olympics uniforms. They put their B team on the college football beat or something.
Gerhardt is going to hunt you down. Craig, did you have one more for Steven? Oh, I didn't know if you had one more question for Steven or not. Steven, thanks for your time. How much do you think is on the line when I know they have to play Stanford? That's a late game on the road in Long Island, and then UCF, and that's a conference game. How much is on the line, in your opinion, when it comes to the game with SMU this year at the end of September?
Well, I think for bragging rights, especially with the rivalry basically ending or going on pause, however you want to look at it, all these games are going to be more intense than ever now. The rivalry already took a step as soon as Sonny came over a couple years ago. So I imagine the intensity is only going to be heightened. You have SMU now. They're taking a couple TCU guys out of the portal. They flipped their quarterback, Ty Hawkins, a couple weeks ago. So I think there's going to be that narrative, and SMU now is in the Power Four conference. So to them, you got to think this is their moment. They feel like to catch up to TCU or pull closer. I think they have a pretty good recruiting class. So it will be, especially if TCU comes into that game 3-1, or in the flip side, let's say you start 1-2 with losses to UCF or Stanford. Now, the desperation will be extremely high for TCU, or if you're on the flip side 3-0, SMU would love to deliver some payback, because as bad as TCU was last year, we all remember, they handled SMU, one of the best SMU teams in program history, with relative ease. So I know that will be on their mind as well.
Thanks for your time, Stephen. Always a pleasure to have you on the show. Stephen Johnson covers TCU for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. And another